Hey, what's up guys? I'm back again with another video. I'm gonna take you through how I painted this room. I like to start with brushing the ceilings. So the first thing I do is cut around everything on the ceiling. You always want to work top to bottom when you're painting. Brushing these corners isn't really that necessary because I decided to use a mini roller, which will get in there. If I was using a big roller though, you would have to do that. Now I'm just straining the paint. Always good to do this with a running sink and a paint resistant drop. You can usually find them in your local paint store. So here's the little microfiber mini roller that I'm using to do the perimeter. These are nice because they get all the way into the corners. I don't always use these to get the perimeter. It depends on the mood I'm in. Sometimes I'll just brush it. Sometimes I'll use my big roller. One of the things you got to be mindful of though, if you're going to roll the perimeter, is feathering the edge on the wall and on the ceiling, because you don't want anything coming through that brushwork later on. Now you can see just how off-white the ceiling is. And if you do a lot of painting, you probably don't need to worry about keeping a wet edge because you're fast enough. But if you don't do a lot of painting, you might want to add an extender like Floetrol to your paint. It'll help keep a wet edge as you're working, give you a little more open time, and it'll level things out a little slower and nicer for you. Then you just want to roll the opposite direction on the second coat. If you get a nail pop with exposed drywall paper like this, you got to put a primer on it. Otherwise, it'll delaminate when you go to repair it. You just reset or remove the nail, throw a couple screws on either side, and then patch it with Durabond. I like to put the first coat on kind of tight. It'll shrink in a little bit, and you'll have a little dent probably. Then you just throw another coat on of a lightweight Easy Sand or something like that. Prime it, paint it. This room is all go in one color. And up against that accent wall, it looks kind of white, but it's actually a blue. It's a little more pastel than the current blue that's on there. It's called Icicle. It's a Sherwin-Williams color. If any painters are watching this, they're probably thinking, why in the world is he using such a small brush? Well, I got hand problems, that's why. But it's all good. We make it work. I do like the control of a larger brush, but I started getting used to these little brushes. They're pretty sharp, some of them. A lot of times I'll catch myself brushing around some technical stuff that the big brush is just too big for. They fit in a lot of tight spaces. But there's not a lot of weight on the brush, and I feel like the weight of the brush actually helps you keep a steady hand. It's one of the things I miss about a big brush. On the plus side though, you kind of get used to the smaller cuts, and it makes you pretty darn precise with the roller. I used to feel like I needed more than like a 3-inch cut to roll it out, but once you start using these smaller brushes, you really don't need much more than 1 inch. I would say the biggest drawback though is just how much paint you can get out of one cut, because you spend a lot of time dipping the brush when you got a smaller brush. But you know what, man? I'll take that over my hand pain any day. No hand pain with these brushes. You know, I'm probably a special case though, because my first painting gig, for basically 5 years, all I did was brush. I'm not really exaggerating. For about 5 years straight, I was brushing all the walls in about 5 units every single day. That's not real conducive for a long painting career, honestly. I was probably painting for about 10 years before I got wise to switch into a smaller brush. If any other painters are watching this and they got hand pain like I do, give a smaller brush a try. It's like night and day. You know, you'll always get the hand pain if you're working long hours, but the smaller brush kind of works like a charm. So I had already painted that windowsill. Always like to paint door frames and windowsills and stuff like that before I hit the wall. At least one coat. There's a little closer view of what I'm doing. That off-white color that you see there inside the window, that was actually the color of all the trim. And yeah, so that trim was also oil-based. So I had to degloss all that and put a couple coats on that. No big deal. I've been running into a lot of oil-based trim lately. And that's another reason why I really like the Emerald Urethane Trim Enamel for trim. It bonds pretty well. You just got to make sure you properly prep before putting it on there. And this is Emerald Matte Finish. Another good paint. Emerald from Sherwin-Williams and Aura from Benjamin Moore. Both really good wall paints. And going back to the Emerald Urethane Trim Enamel, another good thing about that paint is if you happen to be painting an exterior door and the exterior side matches the interior side, you can just use that product. It's a interior exterior paint, so you don't have to worry about getting an extra quart just to paint that one outside of the door. So in that little intro finger snap I didn't really capture even the different color trim. The transformation in this one is actually pretty significant because it's a different color ceiling, walls, and trim. Everything's getting a new color. Doing everything except the inside of the closet. Lucky for me, they're changing this carpet out eventually too, which is nice. Although I still try to be extra careful. I got the video sped up a bit, as you can see, but I'm actually working pretty slow. You don't really want to make speed the goal. You want to make quality the goal. And then speed will just come naturally. You don't really ever want to work too fast. And the reason for that is because there is a speed at which paint will start flying off the brush or off your roller. And so if you know exactly what speed that is, you can just work very nice and neat and never have to worry about paint flinging off your brush. You know, because if you start flinging paint everywhere, you're actually going to end up taking longer when you factor in having to, clean up your mess. Now, speed is one of the goals, because after all, time is money. And if you're taking more than a day to paint a bedroom, then, you're probably working too slow. It's about finding that happy medium between the quality of the work, what the client wants, their budget, and how much prep you want to do. If you're pretty comfortable with a brush, your brushed edge might not be that much different from your taped edge, and it might not warrant the extra money and time. This bed was not your typical bed. It was the heaviest one I've come across in a long time. I just decided to leave it. It's really, really hard to move. It's actually the first one I haven't been able to move. I got a little impatient waiting for this thing to set up, so just throw a little heat gun on it. It's a little cheat code. After the heat gun, you just sand it and throw some primer on it, and you're ready to go. Now we're into the rolling. This whole entire room's pretty tight for the rolling. So you can see how close I am to the wall. So close that I could barely roll floor to ceiling, which I usually try to do if I can. But sometimes you're just really tight. So this is just that first coat. The emerald goes on real nice, levels out real nice. I'm using a little 9-inch microfiber because there's not a ton of wall space. It doesn't really warrant a huge roller. The 9-inch roller fits in those spots real well. If I'm just painting a bedroom like I often find myself doing, you know, a 9-inch is perfectly fine. It's nice and light. You can get really close to all your cut work, especially along the frames. You know, it looks like I'm rolling a little fast, but I'm actually rolling really slow on purpose. Paint will come off the roller if you roll too fast, so you roll nice and slow and you don't have to worry about that. And if you're using real microfiber with the emerald paint and you're rolling at the correct speed, virtually nothing will come off that roller. Your arms will be completely clean, as well as the baseboards below, which is nice. You don't have to worry about taping them up. I like to do the final coat on those last anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I got one coat on all the walls now. And I got lucky again, guessing the correct amount of paint. I've been on a little roll with that. So I took my little lunch, and now I'm just finishing up this last coat on the baseboards, making sure that everything's nice and straight and clean. And then that's going to be it. If you got a good angle tip brush, you can get into the gap below the carpet, on the edge of the carpet, without getting any paint on the carpet, which is nice. Now I'm just putting a final third coat on this windowsill because it was a little marked up more than the other trim. This emerald urethane trim enamel dries to the touch pretty quick, takes a little longer to cure, bonds super well, so don't get it on your hands. And that's the reason I'm using a Chinex brush for this, because they tend to clean a little bit easier than your typical brush. And there it is. Everything's done now. Just waiting for that second coat to dry down a little bit. And I'm about to roll out. Catch you guys on the next one. Like and subscribe. Snap. Whole new room. And I got some wild tips and tricks coming, so you know what to do.